Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the southeast. A vital new route to ease congestion at the Dartford crossing, or a £9 billion white elephant. As the Lower Thames crossing comes a step closer, we ask, is it really needed?
The QE2 bridge opened in 1991. It's woefully overstretched. So as far as I'm concerned, there's an absolute need to add to the infrastructure to get traffic across that river much easier.
Looking after the people who look after us. As it's revealed, there were 2.8 million NHS sick days in our region over the past 2 years.
Also tonight, 10 years of police and crime commissioners. How has their role changed, and are they here to stay?
And countdown to kick off as England and Wales go head-to-head in the World Cup. We're with fans in Brighton. Good evening. It's been on the drawing board for 15 years, but today one of the country's most eagerly anticipated road schemes moved a step closer.
Yes, the Lower Thames crossing between Gravesend and Tilbury will become England's longest road tunnel when it's completed. And for the millions who regularly sit in traffic queues at the Dartford crossing, it will offer a quicker route in and out of the southeast.
But despite those 15 years of consultation, not everyone's convinced it's the right location. And as Tony Green now reports, some aren't even sure the tunnel's needed at all.
Here at Hull Farm in Essex, pupils from the appropriately named Woodland School are planting the first trees in what will become community woodland. The whole place was bought by National Highways, which plans to plant 1 million trees to counter the effects of a new tunnel under the Thames, taking traffic away from the Dartford crossing. It's a project that was first planned before these children were born, but this week passed a crucial milestone.
We submitted our application last month. The planning inspectorate accepted it yesterday, and that then puts us into the formal planning process for the next 16 to 18 months, which at the end of a Secretary of State then makes a decision and we then proceed into construction.
We started consulting on the Lower Thames crossing 15 years ago. Why is progress so glacially slow?
It's a mixture of a couple of things. Up to 2016 we were deciding on where the route would go, and then from 2016 onwards it's then about how we then apply that route best.
South of the Thames, the tunnel would link here with the A2 and M2. But most of the major work is in Essex. Despite 6 consultations, there are plenty of people who aren't happy.
We still feel that the Lower Thames crossing is not fit for purpose. It'd be hugely destructive. It won't solve the problems at the Dartford crossing, and it'd be a complete waste of £10 billion or more of taxpayers' money.
In Thurrock, we have the biggest concentration of logistics industries. We absolutely depend on having a functional road network to enable our businesses to continue. We've got the fastest growing port sector in the country, and frankly, National Highways design takes no account of that whatsoever.
The MP has yet to convince colleagues in Whitehall or in local government.
I travel to Kent quite frequently, and going south sometimes is okay, but coming the other way it can often be a challenge. So the infrastructure on National Highways clearly needs to be added to in terms of getting people across the Thames.
Whether the crossing ever gets built, the trees have begun to go in. These children won't have to plant the remaining 14,000 destined for this site, but they'll certainly be old enough to drive by the time the tunnel gets built, if the road ahead for this project is clear. Tony Green, ITV News, Brentwood.
The National Crime Agency says a man's been arrested in connection with the drownings of 27 migrants in the English Channel last November.
The NCA says 32-year-old Harim Ahmed Abu Bakr is from Gloucestershire. They worked with the French authorities to identify him.
Well, meanwhile, it's reported that the government is reviewing plans to fast-track the removal of asylum seekers from designated safe countries to tackle the migrant crisis. More than 42,000 migrants have arrived in the UK so far this year. The Ministry of Defence said 426 people made the journey yesterday alone.
Well, the Home Secretary is believed to be looking at intensifying a list of countries deemed by the Home Office to be safe so that migrants can be returned rapidly.
The jury has been sent out in the trial of a man accused of murdering 2 women in Sussex. Mark Brown from Hastings has denied killing Alexandra Morgan and Leah Ware. The 2 women went missing in 2021. Leah's body has never been found. The jury will continue their deliberations at Hove Crown Court tomorrow.
Now, it's been more than 7 years since 11 men were killed when a vintage jet crashed on the A27 in Sussex, and tomorrow the inquest will finally begin. The pilot who survived the crash was later cleared of manslaughter. However, the remit of the inquest has been narrowed following a High Court ruling not to reinvestigate the disaster. Andy Dickinson reports.
Jacob Schilt was killed on his way to play a game of football when a jet flying at the Shoreham air show crashed into the nearby A27. He was one of 11 men who died in the explosion that day. Pilot Andy Hill later acquitted of manslaughter. A civil aviation authority report then finding that there was no identifiable risk of the cognitive impairment he says he experienced at the controls.
I think what we really want is the truth to come out, and that's the only thing we can really hope for now. I've always said I want people to take responsibility.
7 years ago, this bridge became a very public wall of flowers, an act of mourning for a whole community touched by these 11 men and the tragedy that happened here. The flowers have gone, memorials have gone up, and now finally an inquest, and yet its powers of investigation have been clipped.
I think it's surprised us that there are so many legal wranglings, but for us so much goes on behind the scenes that it's been a real revelation to us.
How do you think you'll feel once the inquest is over and the whole legal process has finished?
And that will be a shock, and that's going to be quite hard to cope with. Suddenly it won't be the expectation or something, or hope or whatever it is.
Yeah, we don't know how we'll be when we get out the other side of it. It worries us a lot. I mean, obviously we're never going to stop thinking about Jacob or forget about Jacob, but what about other people? At the moment, it's still very much in the public eye. It's very much, certainly with our friends and relatives. And will we all stop talking about him or stop talking about what happened? We're not sure how we're going to cope with that.
Jacob Schilt would have celebrated his 30th birthday in February, a life cut short among many others. 11 families still looking for answers, still coming to terms with their grief. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Shoreham.
You're watching ITV News Meridian in the southeast. Coming up on the programme, conferences, calls, inspections and dogs, all in a day's work for a police and crime commissioner.
And it's less than an hour to go to kick off. England and Wales go head-to-head in the World Cup. We'll be live for the build-up atmosphere in Brighton.
More on all of our stories today, of course, on our website. itv.com/Meridian is the address. You can call us, 0808 1010 095 is the number. And as ever, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter and on Instagram.
Next tonight, parents in Sussex are angry at plans to suddenly withdraw secondary education at a school for boys with autism and ADHD.
It's the first time Year 7 has been included at Brantridge in Haywards Heath. Parents told us it's a cruel decision as the children have already settled in and any disruption will have huge consequences for them.
Well, West Sussex County Council have said the issue is not down to funding but a disagreement over land, as James Dunham now explains.
Whoa, this one's really bouncy.
Friends Aidan, Ewan and Noah believed they could climb to their highest potential at Brantridge. They now face being forced to develop elsewhere.
This school has brought me on from where I was to where I am now, and it's helped me a massive margin. So I'm really disappointed that the council just waved it in front and just taken it away.
I've been looking forward to staying with my friends and at the school because I know everyone, and then when I go into a secondary school brand new and I don't know anything, so that's why I want to stay here.
I like it there quite much, and it makes me feel quite comfortable when I know everybody, all the new kids and everything. And tops to the chef. The chef is very good.
What's your favourite thing that the chef does there?
Macaroni and cheese.
Not so easy to digest the school's shock announcement 6 weeks into the new term. In bold writing, the letter to parents read, "There will not be a secondary provision here from September 2023. West Sussex County Council, who at the start of the year approved plans to fund Brantridge's expansion from a primary school, said the decision is not a question of funding. The issue is because we have not been able to reach an agreement with the landowner of the proposed secondary site," adding, "We are working to secure an agreement. Unfortunately, this has not been possible in time for the current Year 7 or Year 6.
It already is taking a massive toll on their mental health.
Parents tell me they are in despair.
Consistency, routine, everything is key, and they've all had such traumatic past when it comes to their education. They've all gone from pillar to post and been failed so many times, and to then believe that they're not going to have to go through that again because they think they can stay on here until they're 16, it's just the worst thing that they could have had happen to them.
So my son's got quite extreme behavioural needs, but if he's in somewhere where he's understood and he's calm, he can actually achieve. And that's the difference that a school like Brantridge can offer our boys.
It's cruel to put our children through such a traumatic time. All the provisions in the area are full. It makes it even more complicated for us, and it shouldn't have to be this way.
It would be cruel to any child, really, just to haul them out of the secondary school or the secondary system that they've settled into with such short notice. But to do that to vulnerable children, it is quite extraordinary, and I don't understand how.
The council says it shares the disappointment felt by these children and their parents, with their educational futures no longer on a stable footing. James Dunham, ITV News, Staplefield.
A stalker who followed his victim to a women's shelter in Dover has been jailed. Moyazam Hussain was sentenced to more than 4 years and given an indefinite restraining order. He'd followed his victim when she left another area of the country because of his behaviour towards her.
The High Court has issued a new injunction to deter protesters from disrupting traffic on the M25. Just Stop Oil caused long delays on the motorway earlier this month. It means anyone entering or fixing themselves to any object on the motorway will face legal action.
Figures have revealed a shocking level of staff sickness within the NHS. ITV News has found that staff from our region took 2.8 million days off sick over the past 2 years.
A large proportion of that was due to anxiety, stress and depression, making it even more worrying. Chloe Oliver has been speaking to a former doctor from Eastbourne about life in the NHS and a woman from Dartford who is trying to create change.
This reconstruction is familiar to hundreds of NHS staff across the country. 2 years on the front line of one of the worst medical pandemics in history has unsurprisingly left many healthcare professionals' mental health at breaking point.
Hey guys, I'm just checking in. I stopped really quickly to have a quick bite to eat. We've been really swamped.
Noreen from Eastbourne worked as a doctor in the NHS for 9 years, but quit after collapsing from exhaustion.
I'd worked quite a number of hours that week because we also had staff off with COVID and stress-related illnesses and things like that. So I was sort of plugging the gap as a locum, and I was on a ward round, and then next thing I knew I was on a hospital bed because I had essentially fainted and collapsed.
She says she struggled to cope with the intensity of the workload.
A lot of us are operating on goodwill, working long hours. I just remember being like, if you can't have healthy patients if you don't have healthy doctors.
Data obtained by ITV News after a Freedom of Information request found NHS staff in the south took 2.8 million sick days over the last 2 years. That's almost 1 in 4 staff taking the time off because of anxiety, stress or depression. The union that represents healthcare workers in our region say those figures are worrying.
Currently, all NHS trusts across the southeast of England are finding it very difficult to recruit and retain staff. So it means that the existing staff are under a lot of pressure due to those vacancies. And also at different times there's been very high sickness absence rates with staff themselves off isolating with COVID or suffering from COVID themselves.
That's what Claire is trying to change. After seeing the stress of doctors treating her dad in hospital, she knew with her work as a counsellor, she had to help. So she created a free service funded by donations, which is now helping more than 9,000 medical professionals every week with confidential advice and support.
At the start of the pandemic, I remember talking to somebody on the phone who was incredibly distressed. They had been a research scientist and had been put onto a COVID ward to help, and walked onto the ward and was given a huge pile of papers and told to phone their families and let them know that they'd passed away. And they were sobbing on the desk within a few phone calls. This isn't just about the pandemic or COVID, this is about a workforce that are incredibly traumatised on a regular basis.
In a statement, the Department of Health and Social Care said, "We are hugely grateful for the hard work of NHS staff, and their health and well-being is of paramount importance. Frontline staff can get rapid access to mental health services through 40 nationwide mental health and wellbeing hubs." They have also commissioned NHS England to develop a long-term workforce plan to help recruit and retain more staff. And in the autumn statement, the government has announced a £3.3 billion increase in NHS funding. Claire is among those wanting to help tackle the stigma around mental health among NHS staff by reaching out a hand to those who are always there for us. Chloe Oliver, ITV News.
And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. With all the details, here's Mary Nightingale.
Less than an hour to go until a home nation clash like no other. England and Wales preparing to face each other for the first time in World Cup history. We'll have all the build-up ahead of tonight's big game. Plus, the unanswered question of regulating online content, with accusations the much-delayed online safety bill has been watered down. And what the census tells us about the changing nature of this country. Do join us for those stories and more at 6:30.
Now, they were originally described as British sheriffs, and their introduction marks the most radical shake-up in how police forces were run for a generation.
And this month marks the 10th anniversary of the introduction of police and crime commissioners, the directly elected person responsible for setting local force priorities.
Katie Bourne has been in post in Sussex since the beginning, making her one of the longest-serving PCCs in the country.
And she's agreed to let our cameras follow her for the day to give an insight into what the role involves, as Kit Bradshaw explains.
On a quiet industrial estate in Lewes.
Morning.
Hi, Katie. We'll need this today. It's the start of a familiar daily routine for Katie Bourne.
OK, super.
Elected as Sussex's first Police and Crime Commissioner in November 2012, she's seen Chief Constables, Home Secretaries and Prime Ministers come and go.
You've just been handed your agenda for the day. Has the role got busier over the 10 years?
Definitely. About 2.5 years in, they gave us responsibility for victims of crime. And so obviously that has added a whole new dimension to the role. So yeah, it's very varied. I'm quite privileged to do this job.
The first engagement of the day is at police headquarters, thankfully just 500 yards up the hill from the PCC's deliberately separate office.
And where's home for you in Sussex?
I live in Portsmouth, so I travel across to Sussex.
An opportunity to meet some of the force's newest constables.
35 new recruits here today. Was it frustrating that for much of the past 10 years, officer numbers were actually falling rather than rising?
It was very difficult during the austerity period, and I think one of my biggest regrets was the reduction in numbers of PCSOs that we made. And so that's my pledge to the public going forward. So that's for me a red line. We're never going to do that one again.
After the formal inspection alongside senior officers, there's time for an informal catch-up with some of the force's four-legged workers. Milo and Maggie aren't operational police dogs, but they're for officers' well-being.
we know that they deal with such traumatic and challenging incidents on a daily basis. So even if they just come in, quite often you'll see, a big strapping police officer on the floor, on their knees, cuddling
a dog. Yeah.
Before politics, Katie Bourne owned a dance company and has been working with the contact centre team on making it easier for businesses to report crime online.
In a good sense, there's a lot more being reported. Actually, I think some of the shops are starting to take a step back around expecting their staff to get involved, which is really good. But of course, the expectation then is that we gather that evidence and we pick it up and do something with that.
We've never seen a PCSO.
Next, it's back to the office.
We've had eggs thrown during Halloween.
To hear the concerns of town and parish councillors in the Chichester district.
To restore confidence and trust in institutions, because they are at a very low ebb.
What impact are scandals in other forces, particularly in the Metropolitan Police, having on confidence, do you think, here in Sussex?
A big impact, and certainly, speaking to police officers just following the tragic murder of Sarah Everard, people were really upset here. Officers themselves felt horrified by what had happened, and I do think it's important that I and other public officials like me are seen talking to the public, and then you've got to take that back and feed that back into the police force, and it helps improve. Budget pressures.
A key part of the job is setting force priorities and budgets. And it's fears over funding that dominate discussion at this performance meeting, the 100th held with chief officers.
We're going to have to probably find 17 million for next year. What plans are in place for that one?
We have known for some time that there is a gap in our budget for next year, and that sum, as you say, is significant, and that number is not a number we're going to be able to meet without some significant changes.
Introducing an elected party political role into policing was controversial, but despite initial predictions that it wouldn't last, it does now appear to be firmly established.
10 years ago, there was very little that the public knew about the old police authority. I mean, our police authority had less than one piece of correspondence a week coming into them from members of the public. Well, now we get several hundred a week coming in. So we know that the awareness is raised, but there's always more work to do.
So it's quite a lot.
That additional work, not just to continue to educate the public about this role, but also to take tough decisions as policing braces itself for another round of government austerity. Kit Bradshaw, ITV News, Lewis.
Now let's turn our attention to sport. Sarah joins us in the studio. Sarah, a bit of a quiet evening, isn't it? Not much going on.
No. Thank you. England are tonight on the verge of qualifying for the knockout stages of the World Cup as they prepare to take on Wales. England manager Crawley's Gareth Southgate says the match is going to be like a derby and a cup tie all rolled into one.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
So the players have been training in the Qatar heat, with Southgate's side aiming to qualify for the next round as group winners and to bounce back from a relatively underwhelming performance against the United States.
There's a lot for both teams resting on the game. There's no game where there isn't pressure on either team, and really our performance is the key. We have played well with the ball in our first game, scored a lot of goals. In the second game was tougher for us. We defended really well, and now we want to put both elements of the game together.
And of course, while many fans will be glued to the TV at home to watch tonight, many are heading out to venues across our region, keen to enjoy the big match atmosphere. Our reporter Joe Caution is at the Brighton Sports and Social Club, where fans are gathering tonight. Joe, a big night ahead.
Absolutely, Sarah, and you can feel like the tension's building. It's almost like we're in the tunnel, preparing for the game, ready to walk out on the pitch and head home the winner in tonight's match against Wales. We're actually going to walk down into the bar area of the Brighton Sports and Social Club now, a free and family-friendly venue where you can bring your own food to watch the game. The final preparations getting underway here, and it will be packed to the rafters come 7 o'clock tonight. Let's talk to the club secretary, Sandra Wood. Now, Sandra, why should we come here tonight instead of the pub down the road?
It's a great place to come, without the rowdiness, but with lots of atmosphere in here. Just come and enjoy the football, lovely people, from all different backgrounds. And we're also collecting here for the food bank.
And we're hoping it's as busy in that pot, in that box there, as it is in here tonight. Let's also speak to Benny Dew from Footy for All. Benny, why are venues like this so important?
Well, I think for us it's about inclusion, and unlike a lot of other spaces, where it might be quite rowdy, as Sandra said, we want this to be a family-friendly space where people of all different backgrounds can come, feel safe, feel included, and just enjoy the beautiful game that we're here to enjoy. And what an antidote to what's going on over there and all the politics around FIFA, hey?
Absolutely, Benny. Thank you ever so much for speaking to us. Let's quickly get some predictions. Who's going to win tonight, Thea?
England.
What's the score going to be, Luna?
It's going to be 5-0.
5-0, good. And a score prediction from you, Keith?
I think we'll win 3-0.
Final question for the rest of the room. Who's going to win tonight?
England!
Back to you, Sarah.
Lots of confidence there. Joe Caution and everyone there tonight enjoy the game. And of course, some fans from our region have travelled out to Qatar, among them members of the Simmons family. Some of the group have followed England home and away since the 1980s, and Stuart Simmons set himself a challenge to take a selfie with a supporter of each of the 32 nations competing in the World Cup.
And I've done it. I've got a picture of all of them, I've got a selfie with them, and they're all just so happy you can go up to them and go, can I have a picture? So happy to take a picture with you.
It's been absolutely crazy out here. Weather's 31 degrees, really, really good. And obviously all the stadiums got air conditioning, which is even better.
Yeah, they are having a great time. And from the World Cup to the FA Cup, the draw for the third round took place last night, handing Brighton a trip to Middlesbrough. And if they can get past Dagenham and Redbridge, Gillingham will host Leicester at Priestfield. And finally from me, the Brighton Marathon will go ahead next year under new management. The current organisers, Grounded Events, recently went into administration. The City Council has given London Marathon Events a licence to deliver the event for 3 years. Good news, it is a much-loved event.
Thank you, Sarah. Score prediction for tonight?
Oh,
what do you think?
I don't think it's going to be easy. I think Wales want it so badly, don't they? I'm not giving you a prediction.
I think 5-0 was a little optimistic.
Yeah, I think 4-1.
Okay.
4-1. Weather time now. Sally Williams.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there, a very good evening to you. So our weather has calmed down a bit from what we've been used to this month. Pretty cloudy and grey outside, apart from tomorrow afternoon where we could get some brighter spells. There's mist and fog around as well, and it's turning colder as we go through the week. Back to the detail for tonight though, and there's still quite a lot of cloud around. We've got mist and fog forming overnight, mostly dry. Might get a few showers skirting the coast by dawn. Our temperatures dropping away, be colder than that in the countryside. Possibly the odd bit of isolated frost first thing tomorrow morning in the countryside. But it will be cool wherever you are tomorrow and quite grey and dull as the day starts. Mist and fog around again. Where that cloud is thick enough, you could get the odd shower, but mostly dry. And you can see into the afternoon a few brighter spells emerging. Our temperatures, though, still cool. Highs of only 8 to 10 degrees. Our high tide times, well, let's take Hastings, for example, 3:23 in the morning and 16:06 in the afternoon. So I shall leave you with the outlook. Not a huge amount of change as we go through the week, mostly dry apart from the odd shower, and our temperatures dropping down. Take care, I'll see you later on. Cheerio.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
It's getting chilly, and in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
4-1 is brave. I'm just saying.
You've got to be brave.
That's
brave
true.
and bold.
I'll take 1-0. Thank you very much for watching. I'm back with a late update just after 10:30. Bye-bye.
Good night.